Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Alif Aiman. The topic that we were given is from Chapter 18, Open Economic Macroeconomics Adjustment Policies. In this chapter, the learning goal is to understand how a nation can achieve internal and external balance with fiscal and monetary policies. Policymakers need to achieve two goals of macroeconomic stability, which are internal and external balance. An open economy is one that interacts freely with other economies around the world. Countries with open economy interact with other countries in two ways, which are it buys and sells goods and services in world product markets, and it buys and sells capital assets in world financial markets. Open economy countries are involved in trades. Trade is a basic economic concept involving the buying and selling of goods and services between parties. International trades allow countries to expand markets for both goods and services that otherwise may not have been available to it. International trades consist of import and exports. Imports are goods and services that are produced from other countries and are sold domestically. Meanwhile, exports are goods and services that are produced domestically and are sold to other countries. There are two types of fiscal policy, which are expansionary and contractionary fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policy, designed to stimulate the economy, is more often used during a recession, time of high unemployment, or other low periods of the business cycles. It entails the government spending more money, lowering debts, or both. The goals of expansionary fiscal policy is to put more money in the hands of consumers so they spend more to stimulate the economy. Explained in economic language, the goal of expansionary fiscal policy is to bolster aggregate demand in case when private demand has decreased. The second one is contractionary fiscal policy. Contractionary fiscal policy is used to slow economic growth, such as when inflation is growing too rapidly. The opposite of expansionary fiscal policy, contractionary fiscal policy raises tax to cut spending. As consumers pay more tax, they have less money to spend, and economic stimulation and growth slow. Under contractionary fiscal policy, the economy usually grows by no more than 3% per year. Above these growth rates, negative economic consequences such as inflation, asset bubbles, increased unemployment, and even recessions. There are two types of monetary policy, which are expansionary and contractionary monetary policy. The first one is contractionary monetary policy. This type of policy is used to decrease the amount of money circulating throughout the economy, typically by selling government bonds, raising interest rates, and increasing the reserve requirement for banks. The government uses this method when it wants to avoid inflation. The second one is expansionary monetary policy. This type of monetary policy can increase the economy's money supplies through decreasing interest rates, lowering reserve requirement for banks, and the purchase of government security by central banks. This policy helps lower unemployment rate as well as stimulate business activities and consumer spending. The overall goal of this policy is to fuel economic growth, but it can also have an adverse effect, occasionally leading to hyperinflation.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. So next is the objective or the economic goals of a nation, which is to achieve the internal balance, external balance, economic growth, equal distribution of income, and the environmental protection. Internal balance refers to the full employment or a rate of no more than 4 or 5% per year, and a rate of inflation of no more than 2 to 3% per year. If there is inflationary pressure or unemployment, the economy requires further adjustment in prices. External balance refers to the equilibrium in the balance of payments. The balance of payment is a statement of all transactions made between entities in one country and the rest of the world over a defined period. A balance of payment consists of a current account and a capital account. In order to achieve equilibrium in a balance of payments, current account and capital account should be balanced. Other than that, a country can use these three policies, which are expenditure changing or demand policies, expenditure switching policies, and direct controls. This is the Swan diagram. E curve refers to the external balance, while YY curve refers to the internal balance, and the crossing of EE and YY curve defines the full zone of external and internal imbalance and help us to determine the appropriate policy mix to reach the internal and external balance simultaneously at point F. Next, we go to the second objective, which is the economic growth. It refers to the general performance of the economy. Macroeconomics advocates for an economy that operates on a full capacity. In other words, the economy should be in a position of optimally utilizing the available resources with the aim of maximizing the output or the economic performance. The third objective is the equal distribution of income, which is the smoothness of equality with which income is still out among of members of a society. If everyone earns exactly the same amount of money, then the income distribution is perfectly equal. If no one earns any money except for one person who earns all the money, then the income distribution is perfectly unequal. Usually, however, a society's income distribution falls somewhere in the middle between equal and unequal. The last objective of a nation is to achieve the environmental protection, which focuses on solving problems arising from the interaction between humans and environmental system, and include issues related to the conservation, pollution, loss of biodiversity, and land degradation or environmental policy. So that's our objective of a nation.
Now we move to policy instrument. Expenditure changing that's used to change the level of aggregate demand for goods and services for locally product and imports. Fiscal and monetary policy is an example of an expenditure changing policy. Fiscal policy is governmental spending and taxation which impact overall demand. This variable affect household income and employment, which in turn affect consumer spending and investment. By using construction fiscal policy, the government can decrease balance of payment (BOP) deficit for. But how it can be? When government expenditure is decreased and tax increase, domestic production decrease, so it causes import to decrease, hence improving the trade balance. By using contractionary monetary policy, where the government decrease the money supply, it causes interest rates to decrease and discourage investment income and imports, but it will encourage short-term capital inflow, so it helps to BOP deficit. The opposite happens when the government wants to decrease the BOP surplus using the expansionary fiscal and expansionary monetary policy. Next, we move to expenditure switching policy. It refers to the changes in economic return, devaluation or revaluation of the country's currency. Devaluation is switches expenditure from foreign to domestic commodities and can be used to correct a BOP deficit, but it's also increased domestic production and demand for labor will increase. Income will also increase. Then demand for imports increases. It's making the policy less effective. Devaluation refers to switch expenditure from domestic to foreign goods and can be used to collect a BOP surplus. As the currency strengthens, export will be more expensive, hence export will decrease. We move to direct control. The contract is consists of tariff, quotas, and other trade restrictions on the flow of international trade and capital, and also expenditure switching policy, but in a specific attempt to quotas, imports, on imported cars. There are two types of direct control. First, trade control. It is one of the most significant trade. Export subsidy lower the price of domestic goods, and imports and an export subsidy if a specific percentage applied to all items. Next is exchange control. Its restrictions on capital flows and exchange rates. For the example, increased economy return on luxury and non-essential imports and decreased rates on essential imports.
Our nation can achieve internal and external balance are with the help of fiscal and monetary policy. Let's look on the swarm diagram. There were internal balance and external balance. As you can see, E was the intersection between those two. This diagram divides economy into four. Zone 1 is external surplus and internal inflation. Zone 2 is external deficit and internal inflation. Zone 3 is external deficit and internal employment. Zone 4 is external surplus and internal employment. The appropriate depreciation will move the economy or country vertical towards EB curve. Now, country is having external balance, but it still has employment. A fiscal expansion will move country to the right until it reaches the IB curve, but it will lose external balance. And internal balance are achieved at the expense of balance of payment deficit. Now, a further depreciation will move the country vertically upwards towards the EB curve, and it must be followed by fiscal contraction to get back to IB curve. In essence, a repeated use of these two instruments are needed, and it will eventually bring the economy towards point E, which is the simultaneous attainment of internal and external balance. For the issue, I will be focusing on Malaysia Overnight Policy Report (OPR). Based on the report on the website, Bank Negara Malaysia (BNM) Monetary Policy Committee (MPC) raised the overnight policy rate by 25 basis points to 2.575% on Thursday, November 3. OPR is the overnight interest rate set by our central bank, Bank Negara Malaysia, that determines the rate of interest for financial institutions that lend each other money overnight. The one who can increase the OPR is Monetary Policy Committee (MPC). They are responsible for formulating monetary policy and the policy for the conduct of monetary policy operation. The MPC decides on the policy interest rate, the overnight policy rate, to influence other interest rates in the economy. Because of the global economy continue to wind down by rising cost pressure, tighter global financial condition, and strict containment measures in China, these factors more than offset the support from positive labour market condition and the full reopening of most economic and international borders. Inflationary pressure were more persistent than expected because of increasing in demand, tight labour markets, and elevated commodity price. Consequently, many central banks are expected to continue raising interest rates to manage inflationary pressure. Central banks often raise interest rate in response to rising inflation in an attempt to cool off an overheating economy. But if inflation rises too quickly, it can devalue a nation money quicker than interest rate can compensate savers. Headline inflation is likely to have peaked in 3 quarters 2020. Underlying inflation, as measured by core inflation, is projected to average closer to the upper end of the 2% to 3% forecast range in 2020, having average of 2.7% year to date. Because of the aggressive adjustment in interest rate in the US, it results in higher velocity in financial market, affecting other major and emerging market currencies, including the ringgit. The ringgit exchange rate depends on the country's economic fundamentals and is also influenced by interest rates in the US. Nevertheless, The decision are looked on the overnight policy rate (OPR). Investors were waiting for the central bank decision on the OPR. The OPR was later increased to 2.75 from 2.5.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Yashaira binti Kamaruddin, and right now I'm going to explain on the effects on increasing OPR. Firstly, it will affect in increasing borrowing costs because with higher interest rate, interest payment on credit cards and loans are more expensive. Thus, people who already have loan will have less disposable income because they will spend more on interest payment. For example, people with a variable rate loan, when interest rate rises, their loan payment also increases. Next, people will reduce spending as higher interest rate mean higher borrowing costs. People will eventually start spending less, thus relate to our next point, which makes a decrease in demand for goods and services, which and then causes reduced inflation rate. Lastly, it will increase return to saving. An increase in rate may lead consumer to increase saving since they can receive higher rates of return. This is outlined in marginal propensity to save. Next, the solution or ways to overcome in this situation is, firstly, is to budgeting. This is to reduce our unnecessary expenses as we need to spend less and save more because at a higher interest rate, you will need to allocate more of your income to mortgage repayments. Next is to find side income to increase our income. You can find any side hustle suitable in this technology era. We can Google how we can earn extra money, thus take effort to increase our income. Moreover, putting cash into bank account as increasing in interest will also increase saving rates, thus we can get returns on savings. Lastly, to invest in ourselves. This will help you build your career and earning opportunities over your lifetime, whether that is by getting more training, education, or increasing your skill sets. So that is all from us. Thank you.